Today we wanted to introduce you to the Railroaded Traversing Panels workbook. This is a complimentary workbook from our new Traversing Panel workbook bundle. We have removed the single traversing workbook from our offerings and have changed it to the railroaded traversing panels for railroaded fabrics and also an up the bolt traversing panel. So you will have two options there and for two different types of panels to make. This first page is just a notes page, informational page. The face fabric is where we start filling in all our information: client, designer, room, side mark. Anything in gray you can fill in. There are some areas that you have to fill in order to make it calculate, and that would be finished width, finished length, number of windows, fullness, and then you have to fill in the fabric width and the vertical repeat and to make these calculations work. And down here at the bottom, you always have to, if it's a solid fabric, you always have to put 1 because it will not calculate with a 0. So for this railroaded fabric, the thing you have to keep in mind is your length plus your hems and headers cannot be more than your fabric width. Just like any other railroaded fabric, if you've only got 118 inches from selvage to selvage, then you cannot have a panel that's 125 inches long. So you have to remember that when you're looking at railroading fabrics. So for this one, we're going to say that the finished width of the window is 30 inches. The finished length is 100. We're going to say we have 2 windows to calculate. Overlaps and returns. Fullness at 3 times the fullness because it is a shear. All of these calculations go in to come up with 7 yards total, but your width or your labor cost is still calculated based on a 54-inch wide panel. So you have 5 widths at $50 a width, $250 for labor. If this is your wholesale price and you are figuring this price to be what you're going to charge the client, then you put your price per yardage here. All of these other things at the bottom are just informational items. I do find it really, really helpful to go ahead and make those calculations and make those determinations for this information right when I'm doing this. Because what I will do is I will go back and I usually turn off this auto save, but I go back and I will go file and then save as. And when I do that, I'll save this as the name of the client and maybe the room. Maybe I would put Doe Family Room Railroaded Traversing Panels, and I save that to a folder on my computer for that client. So it's always good to go in and have a main copy and then turn off that auto save, because that way it doesn't save over what you've previously done. Okay, so on to lining information and calculations. This is a new change. We have changed it to where you can put in your lining width. This one is set at 54. You can also put the lining width in of a 1/2 lining or a double width lining. So people are using different widths of lining these days, and that was an improvement that we felt like we should make with this new workbook. Purchase trim, again, informational information. All of these need to be filled in to determine your cost to apply and your price of the trim. Leading edge is 100 inches. That's where we're going to put the trim. I'm going to give myself 10 inches of excess. I have 4 panels, 2 windows, 4 panels for trim down the leading edge. 13 yards is what I'll need, and that's $10 a yard to apply, and then $10 for the price of trim if I was going to charge them for it. Fabric banding is the same as the previous ones, but it's pretty easily explained how to figure the fabric banding. Drapery hardware, you can go in and list your items, your item numbers, all the information about the hardware, where you purchased it, the date, and then add in your shipping. If you are doing any kind of embellishments or you need pillow forms and you're going to have some miscellaneous items, you can add those here. And everything on these previous pages have now been carried over to this quote page. You can put a date here. I find that to be really important. Fill in your date so that you know when you have quoted that. And if you notice over here, I've put in, suppose I'm going to do some buttons or another embellishment. But all of the panel labor, the trim labor, the embellishment, here's my labor subtotal, and that is carried over to this final column. Material charges, fabric charges, trim charges, banding, and hardware, and miscellaneous items. You can put in what it's going to cost for installation if you charge for that. This last column is really nice to use as just a good check to make sure you haven't left anything off. One of the things that you are going to have to be aware of is half as a full width upcharge. So if you go back to your face fabric, that's 5 widths of material. You may or may not, you probably always go up at least one for 2 windows. So you're going to have to figure out how that's going to affect your final cost and whether you charge for whole widths or half widths. All of this information is then carried over to the final column. If you need to charge tax on any of this, you can put that in here, and immediately anything that's considered a material has the tax added to it, and then it's carried over to the final column. The last couple of pages are for the workroom, and this is a panels work order. You can go in and drop a picture in here of the fabric. You can fill out all of this information, and then exactly banding, trim information, lining information. Some of it is carried over from the main page, but everything in gray you can go in and add so that you can use it for in the workroom. The next one is an installation page, which is always really helpful if you need to track or give special instructions for the installer. You can even print this out and hand it to them with your product. And of course, a change order form, because you just know that from time to time there are going to things that have to be changed or altered or remade, and this is a good place to keep that information. All of these pages can be printed out separately in PDF. You do not have to print the whole workbook, but it is a good place to fill these out when needed and keep them with the workbook or keep them updated so that you can go back through and see that information and those dates when needed. So this is the Railroaded Traversing Panels Workbook. You can see this video on our website. Also, there are galleries on our website with photos of all our products. And if you have questions or concerns, please give us an email or send us an email at seamlessworkroom@gmail.com. Thank you.